Today, you're going to learn how to speak English with the utmost confidence. I'm going to share with you 5 communication strategies, and if you implement all 5 of these strategies, without a doubt, you will be a confident speaker in the English language. Now, the first strategy that you need to implement is speaking with conviction. Now, what do I mean by conviction? I mean speaking with assertiveness, speaking with a little bit of dominance, speaking with confidence. Now, to do this, you're going to need to lead conversations in a fearless manner. You're going to need to avoid being uncertain or undecisive about what you're saying. Specifically, you don't want to be afraid to show your sense of humor either. You need to think to yourself what the worst possible outcome could even be before you say anything. If you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by simply speaking what's on your mind and saying it with conviction, then you absolutely should. There's nothing to feel nervous about. There's nothing to worry about if there's really nothing to lose at the end of the day. Think about the grand scheme of things. Even if you say something that you regret and that you wish you could take back, at the end of the day, when everyone goes to bed and everyone has a million things going on in their life, probably no one will really care. Another aspect of speaking with conviction is not being afraid to end a conversation either in a polite yet assertive manner. If you have somewhere to be, or if you really need to step out of the conversation for whatever reason, you can simply say, well, I'm going to let you go. It was nice talking to you. Have a nice day. That is a perfectly fair thing to say if you value your time and you actually have other things or better things that you could be doing with your time. You don't have to be rude when you do this, but don't be afraid to do it in an assertive manner. The second strategy that you should implement is speaking less and asking good questions. In terms of these good questions that you are asking, you may wonder, what is a good question? Well, you should be asking open-ended questions. If you ask a question that starts with what or where, you should follow it up by asking how or why. For an example, if I were to say, what are you wearing? I may also ask, why are you wearing it? If I were to ask, where are you going? I may follow it up by asking, how are you going to get there? By asking open-ended questions, it'll give the person who you're conversing with many great opportunities to express themselves and for you to actually learn a lot more about them, which will help you become a better conversationalist throughout the conversation. Try to make the conversation about them, not necessarily about you. I would argue that you should be listening 80% of the time and speaking roughly 20% of the time. And you may say, well, Avery, I wanted to learn how to speak confidently in English, not listen confidently in English. But believe it or not, listening is actually a method that will be much more beneficial to being a good conversationalist than speaking. When it comes to speaking, I actually believe less is more. You do not need to talk a lot to be a good speaker. Most of the best speakers in the world, most of the best public speakers in the world, are very selective with how much they speak and what they say, and they actually speak in very basic manners. So don't feel like you need to talk a lot to be a confident English speaker. The third strategy that you should implement is talking like a human and keeping it simple. Avoid overusing uncommon advanced words in the English language, if you choose to use them at all. If you use too many uncommon or advanced words during a conversation, to most people it can come off as pretentious, and people will not like you for that. It's okay to use it once in a while, or if you're speaking in an academic context, it could be different. However, when you're communicating, if you want to be a good speaker and if you want to be really confident about what you're saying, just keep it simple. Stick to the basics. Use vocabulary words that are universally understood by most English speakers. In addition to this, you should be using a style of language that you think the other person would be comfortable with. You will need to adjust this throughout the conversation as needed. For an example, if I'm speaking with somebody who is 8 years old versus somebody who is 80 years old, I'm going to speak with a different tonality, I'm probably going to use different vocabulary words. If I'm speaking with someone who is 18 years old, I could probably get away with using more slang terms and informal methods of communication. If I'm speaking with somebody or to an audience full of people over the age of 60 years old, I will probably speak in a more basic and universal manner as opposed to using Generation Z slang terms. There are exceptions to these rules, but I am speaking in general. And finally, to act like you're human, you want to embrace making mistakes or embrace any embarrassing moments during a conversation. Do not try to act like you're perfect. Simply put, if you badly mispronounce something, or if you say something that was a little bit over the top, embrace the embarrassing moment, embrace the mistake you made, be humble, admit to it, apologize if it's necessary, but don't try to act perfect and don't try to act like you know everything and like you're always right. That would be the opposite of speaking in a confident manner. You want to be confident in a humble way, not confident in an arrogant way. Now, the fourth strategy that you should implement is speaking about topics that everybody can relate to. A common example of this would be famous events that have happened in the past. Now, if you're going to bring up famous events that have happened in the past, you're going to want to use your best judgment based on the age of the person that you're talking to. For example, if I'm speaking to a teenager, they may not recognize a lot of the music that I enjoy from another time period. However, if you're speaking to someone who is close to your age, they may have more to relate to when you're talking about the music that you listened to growing up as a child. And finally, the fifth strategy that you should implement to speak English confidently would be finding inspiration from good role models. All you have to do is simply identify people who you admire. You could admire the way that they talk, the way that they walk, the way that they carry themselves, the way that they dress. Find inspiration from those who communicate the way that you would also like to communicate. You don't have to copy everything about a certain person, but you should adopt and take the aspects that you do like and then create it into your own style. For example, you could admire 10 different people and each of them could have one aspect that you really like. You can take something that you like from all 10 people, put them together, and try to make your own style out of it. When you're finding inspiration from good role models, observe their body language, as people will judge you a lot more based on how you carry yourself and not necessarily based on what you say. This is actually really good for those who lack confidence in speaking due to their accent in the English language. Contrary to popular belief and contrary to what you might think, it may actually make you sound more fascinating and more interesting if you speak English with an accent, as opposed to the other way around. This is specifically the case when you're speaking to native English speakers who only know English and do not know any other languages. They will most likely find it really fascinating that you speak English with an accent. They may want to know where you're from. It can absolutely work to your advantage if you carry yourself in a confident manner. Also, if you're communicating with adults, most of them will be mature enough to have the patience to speak with someone who doesn't speak English as a first language. And they'll actually try to use words that you can understand, and they'll try to help you during the conversation if they are at a certain level of maturity. I will say that. So there you have it. If you implement these 5 strategies into communicating, you will absolutely be able to become a very confident communicator in the English language. I am sure of it. To recap, you need to speak with conviction, speak less and ask good questions, talk like a human and keep it simple, speak about topics that everybody can relate to, and find inspiration from good role models who you want to communicate like. Now, if you're curious about what your current level of English is, I actually recently created an English proficiency quiz. So if you want to take that and see what level you're currently at roughly, then I'll leave a link in the pinned comment below or somewhere in the description. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next video.